The Clone Wars is probably one of the most beloved projects within the Star Wars franchise. It built upon the prequels that were poorly received on their release, introduced characters that have become fan favourites, and its final arc is probably the best animated content the franchise has gotten. With the Clone Wars also came a couple of major developments for the franchise. Of course, the biggest development is probably the reveal that Maul survived his defeat at the hands of Obi-Wan at the end of Episode 1, but the one we'll be talking about is the introduction of the inhibitor chips. Between the release of Revenge of the Sith in 2005 and the introduction of the chips in Clone Wars Season 6 in 2014, the story beat was that the clones performed Order 66 out of their own free will, and knew about this order for as long as they were alive, with the Jedi being unaware of this inevitable betrayal. The Clone Wars series threw a wrench into this interpretation of Order 66, however. Repeatedly throughout the series, we see that despite the clones knowing that they were created for this war specifically, with very few truly wondering what happened after the war ends, with some even seeing themselves as disposable, their Jedi generals would always treat them with the humanity and dignity they deserved. With 6 seasons of this relationship before the climactic Season 7 where Order 66 would be executed, it would be a really tall order to get your audience to believe that a lot of the clones would execute this order willingly and with blind loyalty to the Republic. I'm not saying this couldn't work, but the work would have needed to be done in order to execute this idea perfectly, especially when you take into account that the fact that victims of Order 66 also included many Padawans and younglings who were children. If the Clone Wars show wanted to go down this route of Order 66 being done out of the clones' free will, I think they had a great opportunity to explain the clones' thinking through one character in particular, Pong Krell. While a lot of the Jedi in the Clone Wars shows did value their clone comrades, Pong Krell despised them and throughout his tenure in the Umbara arc, sought to abuse his position and place the 501st and their 212th regiments in dangerous situations, going so far as to pit the two regiments against each other under the guise of the enemy wearing stolen clone armour. What this arc established to us is that not only the clones can willingly kill Jedi if the circumstances are justified, but what this could have done is that, especially within the 501st and the 212th, sowed doubt into the clone ranks about the true nature of their Jedi generals. If Pong Krell could do what he did and feel next to no remorse for it and see the clones as disposable, who's to say there aren't any other Jedi who feel that way? Compared to the tragedy we do end up getting at the end of the Clone Wars, the clones' individuality leading to the Jedi's downfall I think also works as another flavour of tragedy. Throughout the series, the clones are praised because unlike the Separatist droid army, clones are more free in the sense they can have individual thought, emotions and free will, meaning they could also find unique ways to strategize to win battles compared to just following an algorithm. So, for this individuality to work against the Jedi at the most pivotal moment in the galaxy would be twisting the knife, as it's the very thing that the Jedi loved about the clones that would be their downfall. What could also drive them towards this edge is that if a respected Jedi general like Anakin, who gradually came to distrust the Jedi, pretty much confirmed their supposed fears of the Jedi being traitorous. Of course, there are other wrinkles in this line of thinking to address, such as how widespread this thought would be throughout clones, potentially leading to inner conflicts, and of course, some viewers would want more to justify the clones turning on the younglings. This is where the inhibitor chips come into play. Out of the two options, this is the easiest to justify for believability. If you need a reason for clones with free will to turn on their Jedi generals that are mostly held in high regard, as well as their young students, just write that they're being forced against their will to do so through an obedience chip. While I believe this is the easier choice of the two, that doesn't mean it's any less of a tragedy. As I've said before, the Clone Wars series takes the stance that between the clones and the droids, the clones are the better of the two sides. They can think for themselves, forge meaningful relationships inside and outside of their clone brotherhood, and above all else, have the capability to do the right thing when it counts. They may be mass-produced, but the clones are not droids. Until they are. Order 66 spits on the thesis that the Clone Wars have been holding up till the very last moment in one fell swoop. The surviving clones we have followed, watch and grow through each triumph and tragedy, and gain a lot of friends and foes along the way, are essentially reduced back to factory mode in order to achieve Palpatine's master plan on eradicating the Jedi Order and ushering in the Age of the Empire. Where the old Order 66 was a tragedy of ultimate betrayal and misassumed loyalties, the new Order 66 was a tragedy of the loss of free will.